In the start of the 20th century, women were treated drastically different than women are today. Women were seen as objects used only for men's desires. They weren't seriously considered for any jobs. Almost all women were housewives. Women's clothing choices seemed to have one goal in mind, to make women more pleasing to the eye for men. The clothing took no account for comfort. Lastly, women had no representation in the media. So what happened in the 20th century to cause the change from the woman of 1916 to the woman of 2016? 3 women all used 3 different industries and media to spark the feminist movement and help gain awareness for gender equality. Their names? Coco Chanel, Betty Friedan, and Barbara Walters. In the start of the 1900s, women's fashion very clearly centered around what men thought was attractive instead of what women found comfortable. These fashion fads included the use of the corset, very wide skirts, tight clothing, heavy layers, and clothes that made the bust stand out on women. However, this all changed when Coco Chanel was introduced to the fashion industry.
Enfin, c'est une drôle d'époque. Les femmes sont en train de devenir, je sais pas quoi, autre sexe. Je sais pas comment il faut citer.
Gabrielle Chanel was born on August 19, 1883, in France. She grew up in an orphanage due to her mother's death and father abandoning her as a child. After a few jobs here and there, she started dating around with wealthy men. One of these men helped to finance the shop that she opened in Deauville, France. She obtained the name Coco and started to sell sportswear for women. She used jersey, a fabric that was, up to that point, exclusive for men's underwear. This was only the first trick that Coco used to revolutionize women's clothing. In the 1900s, the corsets were still in use. These corsets represented the idea that women were only there for men's eyes. They were uncomfortable and tight, and Coco Chanel wanted to get rid of them and any discomfort caused by the fads in women's fashions of the early 1900s. So she did. She designed simple dresses, long white pants, tweed suits. She often even chose to wear her designs. Coco Chanel also changed women's suits so that they were more practical and comfortable. She did this by getting rid of all tight clothing and clothing that emphasized women's body parts, such as the bust. Chanel's designs really revolutionized not only the way people dressed, but also the way women felt about themselves. These new styles that she created sparked the idea of equality between genders. Women of today can thank Coco Chanel for getting rid of the restricting corsets and big puffy hoop skirts. Without Coco's designs, women of today would be dressing very differently. In the end, Coco Chanel took big risks, challenging the way things were run in society and exchanging her ideas with the world.
Although Coco Chanel died in 1971, the brand that she created and the morals behind it are still alive today. Chanel is now run by Ellen and Jared Wertheimer. In almost every American household until the 60s, there was a woman who cleaned, cooked, and chauffeured for her family. These women usually had no choice in what they did because society told women they deserved to be in the house. However, Betty Friedan put an end to that.
Joyous woman, because she really feels like she's somebody. And then you see we'll both be able to make love, not war.
Betty Friedan is a name not many have heard, but all have been affected by. She was born in Illinois in the February of 1921. Betty received a psychology degree from Smith College and moved on to do graduate work in Berkeley, California, before she became a wife to Carl Friedan in 1947. They were married for 22 years before their divorce in 1969. Betty was unhappy about the way her life was while being a wife, and soon found out that her college friends felt the same discomfort. She put her psychology degree to good use and started to do studies about the seemingly contagious unhappiness. She soon found out that women did not like to be the wives they were conditioned to be. These studies are what inspired her to write her very controversial book, The Feminine Mystique.
The problem that has no name. The problem lay buried, unspoken, for many years in the minds of American women. It was a strange stirring, a sense of dissatisfaction, a yearning that women suffered in the middle of the 20th century in the United States. Each suburban wife struggled with it alone. As she made the beds, shopped for groceries, matched slipcover material, ate peanut butter sandwiches with her children, chauffeured Cub Scouts and brownies, lay beside her husband at night, she was afraid to ask even of herself the silent question, is this all?
The feminine mystique was not only controversial, it was important. It wasn't a criticizing novel, it was an encouraging piece for women everywhere who felt their potential wasn't being reached. In the novel, Friedan shocks the nation by saying that women were unhappy with being just housewives and wanted to do whatever they chose for themselves. This was a statement that all women agreed to, but not one had the courage to say it themselves. When their thoughts were novelized, they started to gain more confidence, and ultimately it helped lead to where we are today. Betty Friedan helped to explore uncharted territory in society and pave the path for the women of later generations.
He will welcome a woman who can come out from behind that simpering, mask of ruffles that hides so much rage and impotent rage and unnecessary covert manipulativeness, and welcome the woman that can come out of that mask of ruffles and rage and be a person and be a joyous woman because she really feels like she's somebody. And then you see we'll both be able to make love, not war. And in the highest sense, not only between man and woman, the war between the sexes could become an Armageddon if we don't get on with our revolution. But if we do get on with it and we restructure society to make equality really possible, then I think the war
In the
between
years
sexes
before
will end.
1961, television was ruled by one gender, the men. Each news station had male hosts who did all of the interviews and, as they called it, hard work, which usually involved research and, in general, speaking. Women were not allowed to be news hosts. The very thought was absurd. That is, until Barbara Walters became co-host of NBC's Today Show.
Didn't know about sexism. I remember at one point writing a letter to the head of the news department at NBC saying that we should do something on the women's movement, and the answer came back scribbled.
Barbara was born on September 25th, 1931, to her mother Dana and father Lou. In her childhood, Barbara moved frequently because of her father's job. This caused her to be generally alone and friendless besides her mentally handicapped sister. Miss Walters studied at Sarah Lawrence College and graduated in 1954 with an English degree. After college, she became a secretary. However, this was clearly not the job for her. She was hired by the National Broadcasting Channel. At NBC, she became a producer and a writer. After this job, she was hired by NBC's competition, Columbia Broadcasting System. She was another producer. However, she left the job feeling like there was no room for growth. Barbara first went in front of the camera in 1961 when NBC hired her back to write pieces and occasionally appear on camera.
Our reporters. Last week, for example, we forced our staff writer, Barbara Walters, to go to Paris to cover the fashion openings. Now, today is the day that pictures of these clothes are released to the public, and we wanted to have them first. Barbara is with me right now to give us a filmed report. Would you tell me, was this a very trying experience for you?
She started to become a regular on the show and persuaded many elites to come on the show. For example, she interviewed Mamie Eisenhower. After the job, Walters was hired to be the Today Girl, a role that was, up to that moment, a job for girls to basically stand there and look pretty, doing simple tasks. Barbara transformed the role. She wrote her own material and conducted interviews on major topics happening in the world. She was hired as the co-host to the Today Show and quickly earned the respect of her male coworkers and of people all around America. There was one man who did not like her being his co-host, and that was Harry Reasoner. He didn't like a woman being equal to him on television, but that didn't stop her. When Barbara Walters encountered a problem, such as the misrepresentation of women in American media, she fixed it. It is all thanks to her, women were inspired to get other jobs in media, and felt more confident knowing that a woman could work alongside men so freely like Barbara Walters did. Many women owe their jobs to the pioneer Barbara Walters. Oprah Winfrey, Ellen DeGeneres, and Ann Curry all owe it to Miss Walters. Since her first major roles with NBC, Barbara Walters continued to be on the Today Show until she was signed on by ABC, who found a woman could increase revenue. She worked for ABC, writing pieces for their magazine and conducting interviews. She really came back to the scene when she created the show The View for ABC. The View is a show run by 5 women who sit and talk about major topics such as politics or pop culture. Now, Barbara Walters is partially retired but still writes pieces for ABC. 3 women: Coco Chanel, Betty Friedan, Barbara Walters. These 3 women helped to inspire women and lead a revolution while simply doing the things that they loved. They each used their individual industries, fashion, books, and television, to aid the feminist movement and change the way women are perceived. Everybody, man, woman, child, adult, every single person has been affected by all 3 of these women, and it is safe to say we are better off thanks to them.